What if I told you that scarcity doesn't actually exist until you look at it? It might sound absurd at first, but this is one of the most ignored and most liberating truths of the quantum universe and creative consciousness. Most people believe that lack is an external condition, a harsh and unchangeable reality. But what if scarcity is nothing more than a reflection of your focus, the echo of what you insist on observing, consciously or unconsciously? Quantum physics has already proven nothing becomes real until it is observed. Reality before observation exists as a field of infinite possibilities. It is you, with your gaze, your attention, your emotion, who chooses, activates, and solidifies one of those possibilities into an experience. In other words, what you observe expands. What you feed with your attention becomes your truth. Have you noticed how the more you worry about what's missing, the more scarcity seems to show up? That's not bad luck. That's vibrational alignment. Lack keeps repeating in your life because you keep it alive through your constant observation. You revisit it, you relive it, you reaffirm it day after day, thought after thought. In this video, you'll uncover the invisible mechanism behind scarcity. You'll discover how your consciousness is the true architect of your reality, and how changing your focus, changing your frequency, can change everything around you. But first, get ready. Because what comes next might not just change your mind, it might change your entire life. The hidden truth: scarcity isn't reality, it's a projection. Most people believe scarcity is inevitable, a cold reflection of the external world. They think that a lack of money, time, love, or opportunity is just something that happens, something out there they must fight against. But that's one of the greatest illusions in human consciousness. Scarcity isn't a fact, it's a projection. And here's the truth very few people see. What you experience isn't a reflection of the world, it's a reflection of your lens. Scarcity doesn't come from outside, it's born from within, from how you observe reality. Nothing exists in a solid, defined way until it's observed. This isn't philosophy, it's quantum physics. The field of possibilities is always there, filled with infinite paths, outcomes, and realities. But what collapses one of those into concrete experience is your focus, your attention, your observation. You are the projector. The world is the screen. And if the movie that's playing is one of scarcity, it's because that's the script being run inside your mind. Most people are watching that movie on autopilot. They don't realize they're reinforcing the same narrative day after day. By looking at the same problems, speaking the same complaints, feeling the same emotions. Then they wonder why nothing changes. Have you noticed how the more you focus on what's lacking, the more it seems to lack? As if the universe is echoing your gaze? That's not coincidence. It's vibrational coherence. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you wish. It responds to what you observe with emotional consistency. Your lens determines what shows up in front of you. It's like a garden where all you see are weeds, because that's what you're used to looking for. Meanwhile, the flowers are still there. They just don't get your attention, so they wither, disappearing from your perceptions as if they never existed. Scarcity works the same way. It only stays alive when you keep it under the spotlight of your consciousness. The moment you shift your gaze, it starts to dissolve, because there's no longer energy sustaining its frequency. But there's a reason we keep observing lack, even when we know it keeps us stuck. That focus has become a habit, an emotional pattern reinforced over years. Since childhood, we've been taught to look for what's wrong, what's missing, what's not working. We've grown used to seeing through the lens of lack and forgotten that we can change that lens. Scarcity isn't a sentence, it's just one possible reality. And it only continues to be your reality if you keep choosing to observe it. Now imagine, just for a moment, what would happen if you shifted your perspective. If you started to observe not the absence, but the seed. Not what's missing, but what's emerging. You'd begin collapsing different realities, attracting different frequencies, connecting with possibilities that once felt impossible. But to do that, you need to understand one essential thing. Your observation isn't neutral. It shapes, it constructs, it collapses, and that's exactly what we'll talk about next. Because if scarcity only exists when you observe it, what exactly is happening in the moment you focus on something? How is your observation creating, right now, the reality you call life? What comes next might open your eyes in a way that will never let them close again. How observation creates reality, the observer's lens. Have you ever asked yourself how something becomes real to you? On the surface, it seems simple. You see, hear, feel, and so you believe it exists. But what few realize is that before any experience becomes concrete or measurable, it passes through the silent filter of your observation. And that is where everything either happens or doesn't. Quantum physics revealed one of the universe's most intriguing laws. The observer influences the observed. Before observation, everything is just a wave of possibility. Afterward, it becomes a defined particle. It's as if reality were in suspension, waiting to be chosen, waiting for a conscious gaze to say, "This is what I want to experience." What does this mean, practically speaking? It means your consciousness isn't just witnessing the world, it's shaping it. And the tool it uses to do that is observation. When you look at something with intention, emotion, and repetition, you give it form. You imprint your energy onto the quantum field, and the field responds. Always. Think of a camera lens. It doesn't just capture what's there. It chooses what goes into the frame. It zooms, it focuses, it blurs out the background. Your mind works the same way, and everything you focus on, even unconsciously, begins to take up more space, more clarity, more weight in your experience. It's not the world that shows you what to observe. It's your focus that decides what part of the world you'll actually see. You can be surrounded by opportunity and still only see obstacles. You can live in abundance and feel constant lack. You can be surrounded by love and still feel lonely. Because it's not what's out there that determines your reality. It's what you're focused on inside. The lens you use shapes the world you live in. And here's something that may surprise you. That lens isn't neutral. It's built over time, through experiences, traumas, beliefs, emotional patterns. Often you're not observing the world as it is, but as you were conditioned to see it. It's like wearing dark sunglasses indoors and thinking the room is poorly lit. The problem isn't the light, it's the lens. When you understand this, something deep begins to reorganize inside you. Because you realize you're not at the mercy of reality, you're its co-author. And your most powerful tool for creation is where you place your gaze. Listen carefully. Where you place your attention, you place your energy. And where your energy concentrates, reality solidifies. So it's not enough to want a new life. You must observe that new life is real. You must align with it energetically. You must make it the new center of your focus, even before any outer evidence appears. You don't manifest what you want. You manifest what you observe with feeling and consistency. That's why many people, despite using affirmations, visualizations, or prayers, remain stuck in the same outcomes. Because deep down, their focus is still locked on absence, still attached to the old. Observation is like a spotlight in a dark theater. The stage is full of possibilities, but only what you shine light on becomes visible. Only what you light up comes alive. The rest stays unseen until you shift your focus. And when you begin to change what you observe, even gradually, the universe begins to respond with new scenes, new people, new settings. Because you're no longer a passive spectator, you've become a conscious co-creator. The lens of the observer is the key that opens or closes realities. And you can choose to adjust that lens, to refine it, to make it clearer. More open to the new, more aligned with abundance, with truth, with what you truly wish to experience. Now that you understand the creative power of observation, a new question must be asked. And this question could change the way you interact with reality forever. What exactly have you been observing every day, without even realizing it? And even more important, what might happen if you chose to change that focus, starting now? In the next section, We'll dive even deeper into this invisible mechanism that day after day has been programming your mind to repeat the same pattern, the pattern of scarcity. But the good news is that pattern can be rewritten. The invisible mechanism. How lack is reprogrammed into your mind. You might understand that scarcity is an illusion sustained by observation. You might even accept that reality is shaped by focus, and still find yourself repeating lack-based patterns without knowing why. Because knowing isn't enough. You have to deprogram what's operating behind the curtain. And that's where most people fail to look. The invisible mechanism acting within the unconscious mind. This mechanism isn't rational, it's repetitive, emotional, and silent. It begins forming in your earliest years, when you hear things like, money is hard, life isn't fair, that's not for you. Each of these phrases, charged with emotion and repetition, becomes a brick. A foundation of a perception that, over time, feels real, but is actually just conditioning. As the years pass, this pattern stops being a thought and becomes a filter. You wake up and already feel urgency. You notice what's missing, you compare, you feel at a disadvantage. And all of this happens before you've even had a conscious thought. Because the unconscious mind is already running in the background, steering your attention like a magnet programmed to detect lack. It's like you're using an emotional radar calibrated to find what's absent. Even surrounded by abundance, you see what's missing. Even when love is present, you feel scarcity. Because your gaze isn't free, it's conditioned. Scarcity has become an automatic lens. But here's the key, what was installed can be uninstalled. And the process begins with conscious observation, with presence, with the deliberate choice to notice what used to go unnoticed. Gratitude for something small, awareness of a synchronicity, recognition of something you once completely ignored. That choice, repeated consistently, begins to carve a new internal pathway, a new neural trail, a new vibrational response, and eventually a new external reality. Reprogramming doesn't happen through scattered phrases or empty affirmations. It happens when your observation shifts, and with it, your emotion. When you begin to feel differently, you tune into a different reality. But be warned, the old pattern will resist. It will try to pull you back to the familiar. It will trigger thoughts like, this isn't enough. You're still far from it. This isn't real. And it's in that moment you must break the cycle with consciousness. You can say to yourself, that thought is a reflection of the old. But I choose to see it differently now. And that now is all you need. One moment of presence can rewrite centuries of unconscious programming. Scarcity has no power on its own. It needs your collaboration. It needs your focus, your attention, your emotion. When you stop feeding that dynamic, the pattern begins to lose strength. And that's when everything begins to shift. Now be honest, in what area of your life do you feel scarcity has settled in, almost invisibly on autopilot? Comment below with this phrase, today I stop observing lack. Today I change the lens. That simple affirmation, written with intention, already starts to move energy. It signals to the quantum field that something within you is ready to change. If this content awakens something in you, leave a like. It tells me you're aware and committed to this transformation. And get ready, because in the next section, we'll explore an even more powerful factor. It's not just what you observe that creates your reality, it's what you feel while observing that determines what returns to you. It's time to understand the boomerang effect of emotional observation and how it might be creating right now the very life you're trying to escape. The boomerang effect, the law of emotional observation. You already know that observation shapes reality, but there's a detail, often overlooked, that completely transforms the process: emotion. The universe doesn't just respond to what you observe, it responds to what you feel as you observe. This is the real force that collapses possibilities within the quantum field. Because your gaze on its own is neutral. But when it's charged with emotion, it becomes magnetic, vibrational, creative. You can say you want abundance. You can repeat that 1,000 times. But if when you look at your life you feel fear, anxiety, or frustration, that's what the field registers. That's what returns. Not what you say, but what you vibrate. This is the law of emotional observation. Quantum physics has already shown everything is energy, and emotion is energy in motion. It's the electromagnetic impulse that tells the universe what frequency you're broadcasting. And the universe, like a vibrational mirror, reflects that exact signal back to you through people, events, circumstances, and patterns. You might think it's just bad luck when everything starts to go wrong in a single day. But in truth, it's just the field responding to what was activated inside. A dense emotion manifests as a distorted perspective, and that perspective collapses experiences aligned with what was felt. It's an invisible cycle, a quantum reflection, an emotional boomerang. But here's the beauty. The same law that manifests scarcity can manifest abundance. The process is the same. The difference lies in the emotion that accompanies your attention. When you observe the present moment with gratitude, even if it's still far from your ideal, you emit a signal of completeness, and the universe receives it as, this is truth for them. So more of that begins to appear. When you observe a small win with genuine joy, you send out an energetic command that expands that experience. The vibration of contentment attracts more reasons to feel content. More answers, more flow. The problem is, we've been trained to observe what's missing. And not only that, we've been conditioned to feel heaviness, anxiety, and frustration every time we notice something that's not yet how we want it to be. That emotional background is what keeps scarcity alive. Not the outer reality, but the inner emotion you use to reinforce that reality every single day without realizing it. Real transformation begins when you start to observe with new emotions. Not because everything is perfect, but because you understand that what you feel is what builds. You don't need to deny what you feel, but you do need to learn how to redirect your focus, to question the emotion that arises, to interrupt the automatic emotional loop, and choose a new vibration even in the presence of the old scene. That choice is subtle but powerful, and it changes everything. You are not a victim of what you feel. You are the creator of the field you feel, and that field is molded by the union of focus and emotion, attention and vibration, thought and feeling. That's why so often you can do all the right techniques and still see no result, because the emotion hasn't changed. And without that, the signal you're sending remains the same. The good news? This is trainable. You can teach your body to feel gratitude before the breakthrough. You can teach your mind to align with possibility before the evidence. You can observe the present with a new vibration, and that alone begins to transform your reality. But for this to truly happen, you must go beyond knowing. You must apply, shift your focus, recode your frequency, and allow a new reality to emerge from this new vibrational observation. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Because if emotion empowers the field, it's your focus that directs it. And once you understand how to shift that focus, consciously, daily, intentionally, you'll discover that the reality that once seemed distant was never far away at all. How to shift your focus, shift your frequency, and shift your reality. Now that you understand how focus, when paired with emotion, creates reality, it's time to dive into the most transformative part of all. How in practice to shift that focus, alter that frequency, and as a result, open the door to a new reality. But first, a truth that might sting. You're addicted to the way you currently observe life. Yes, your mind has created a focus pattern that feeds itself. It constantly seeks the same types of thoughts, feelings, and stimuli, not out of malice, but out of efficiency. It wants to save energy, so it defaults to what's familiar, even if that familiarity is keeping you stuck in scarcity. Changing your focus isn't just thinking differently, it's breaking a well-established vibrational loop. It's moving through the discomfort of looking at something you can't fully see yet, and still keeping your gaze steady. With intention, with presence, because focus is a choice, and every choice needs direction. The first step is simple but powerful. Become aware of what you're feeding with your gaze. Not just what you think, but what you repeat emotionally every day. What thoughts follow you when you wake up? Where does your attention go when you're alone in silence? If your mind goes straight to worry, to lack, to what hasn't worked out yet, then that is the frequency you're broadcasting. And what you emit, you attract, not as punishment, but as resonance. So how do you shift it? You begin training your observation to notice what's working, what exists, what is already real, no matter how small. It might be a feeling, an idea, a single positive detail in your day. The size doesn't matter, the direction does. Because what begins as a choice eventually becomes a habit. And once a habit is formed, the frequency stabilizes. You don't have to force yourself to feel positive all the time, but you can learn to redirect your gaze. Instead of reinforcing what's missing, reinforce what's beginning. Instead of saying, "I don't have," begin to observe what's emerging. That simple shift is powerful. It's like changing the station on a radio. The device is the same, but the content changes completely. You begin to hear a different song, a different frequency, a different narrative, and your life begins to reflect that new broadcast. But be aware, the old focus will try to pull you back. It will feel more real, more urgent, more convincing, because it's familiar, and the familiar feels safe even when it's sabotaging you. That's why shifting focus requires presence. It's like retraining your gaze, re-educating your brain to move toward what expands instead of what contracts. This doesn't happen in a day. It happens with consistency. And when you begin to do this, something subtle, yet massive, starts to unfold. Reality changes, not because you forced it, but because you finally aligned your focus with the frequency of what you want to live. You begin to notice synchronicities. You attract different people. Solutions show up. Ideas flow. The field reorganizes around your new vibrational center. Because reality isn't something out there. It exists inside your observation. And what you observe with emotional consistency becomes your new ground, your new mirror, your new landscape. That's the power of focus. Focus is the seed of frequency, and frequency is the matrix of your reality, which is why transformation begins with something seemingly small. The choice of where you'll place your attention in the next few minutes, and the next, and the next. Now imagine what could happen if, for 3 days, you chose to observe only what you want to expand, the seed, the possibility, what's already working, and held that gaze with intention and gratitude. Do you really think nothing would change? The new self, who you become when you shift your focus. Something extraordinary happens when you shift your focus. At first it feels subtle, like a small adjustment in direction. You stop feeding lack. You begin to recognize what already exists. You start observing with more presence, more intention, more awareness. But over time, this new way of seeing stops being a practice and becomes who you are. You stop practicing abundance. You become abundance. And that's the moment everything truly changes. Because what transforms your life isn't just what you attract. It's the vibrational identity you begin to embody along the journey. The old mind, programmed by scarcity, taught you that you must get something before you can feel whole, that you must achieve something before you feel peace, that you must have before you can be. But awakened consciousness knows the opposite is true. You must be before you can have. When you shift your focus, and with it, your frequency, you silently begin to build a new identity. One that no longer waits, it emits. One that no longer seeks, it attracts. One that no longer doubts, it knows. You're no longer trying to create a new reality from the perspective of your old self. You're becoming someone whose frequency is already aligned with that new reality. And this isn't performance. It's not denial. It's not toxic positivity. It's alignment. Your vibration stops being an effort and becomes your nature. In this state, You no longer need external confirmation to feel you're on the right path, because your internal state is already the proof. The peace that once required conditions now arises from your simple presence. Trust stops being a tactic and becomes a natural reflection of who you are now. And paradoxically, this is when the external world begins to respond with even more clarity, because you've stopped acting like someone who's waiting and started living like someone who already recognizes. That's the true turning point. You disconnect from scarcity not because things change, but because you did. You observe differently, you feel differently, you interpret differently, you respond differently, and this new being, this new vibration, begins to create a reality fully aligned with who you've become. It's here that you realize true change never comes from the outside in. It always begins from the inside out. And more than that, you realize the abundance you were seeking out there was never out there. It was always in you, hidden beneath layers of fear, distraction, thought habits, and unresolved emotions, waiting only for you to change your focus, to shift your gaze from scarcity to potential, from absence to presence, from need to creation. And now at this point in the journey, you begin to feel the difference between imagining the transformation and becoming it. The old self, built on lack, effort, anxiety about the future, begins to fade. Not because you fought it, but because you stopped feeding it. You stopped observing it. You stopped identifying with it. And a new self begins to emerge. Lighter, more conscious, more aligned. A self that doesn't wait for reality to shift in order to feel good, but shifts reality because it feels good first. This new self isn't in the future. It's in the now, available, alive, vibrating, and the only thing separating you from it is where you choose to place your focus. Because who you become, ultimately, is shaped by the frequency you sustain, not the circumstances you face. And when you sustain, with integrity, a high frequency of trust, gratitude, clarity, and presence, the world has no choice but to respond. We've reached the end of this journey. You've gone deep into truths most never dare to face. You've learned that scarcity is not an external reality, but an internal projection, fed by your focus, reinforced by your emotion, and sustained by your vibrational identity. You've discovered that shifting your focus isn't just about looking somewhere else. It's about changing who you are while you observe. It's about aligning thought, emotion, and presence with the reality you desire to live. And now you hold a key, and with it you can continue collapsing the old or begin consciously co-creating the new. If you've made it this far, I want to know. Comment below, I am the new observer of my reality. That tells me you're not just informed, you're ready. See you in the next journey.